Episode 2 Fashion Model. The story opens with Iwasaki, a young man who often has strange premonitions, but today he feels it more than usual, causing a deep fear within him that something bad is bound to happen. His premonitions are usually accurate, as something always occurs. Due to his anxiety, he accidentally bumps into a roadside sign twice. After that, Iwasaki goes to a coffee shop, but he can't shake off his worries about impending misfortune until he hears about a magazine and opens it. His expression changes when he encounters a model whose face shocks him. In his mind, models are supposed to be beautiful, but this one is different. She has an unusually long face, an excessively long nose, and wide open eyes. When Iwasaki sees her, he feels an unsettling sensation about her. That night, the terrifying face of the model haunts his dreams, causing him to wake up in the middle of the night in fear. The next afternoon, he talks to Oda, a friend in the group working on the contest film. As they are both film students, Iwasaki shares the story of the horrifying model with Oda. But Oda says he isn't surprised, because the world has both normal and strange things. Oda then asks about the screenplay that Iwasaki was assigned to write, but he hasn't started yet, as the model's terrifying face has distracted him. He knows this project is very important, because it is a film that must be submitted for a contest, and if Iwasaki can't complete it, the production team will have to let someone else do it. However, Iwasaki assures that he will finish it quickly. That night, Iwasaki, trying to gather his focus to write the screenplay, finds the horrifying face of the model popping up in his mind again, causing him to scream in frustration as he struggles to erase her terrifying visage from his thoughts. However, as time passes, the memory of that horrifying face gradually fades, allowing Iwasaki to return to writing the screenplay. Their group's film submission wins first prize, and Oda mentions that they are starting to gain some recognition as novice filmmakers. He proposes an idea for their next film, suggesting they cast outsiders, meaning people who are not from their university or acquaintances. Everyone agrees with this idea, so they announce a search for new actors through various media. However, the response is not very encouraging, as only 3 applications come in. This might be because they are a group of novice filmmakers, which doesn't attract much interest. The first applicant does not meet their expectations, but the second one is quite good looking, and could potentially be cast. The beauty of the second applicant brings great joy to everyone, almost making them forget about the third applicant. When Oda brings the third applicant in for a look, he is shocked, because compared to the second, they seem like they are from different worlds. When Iwasaki sees her, he is nearly in shock, as the horrifying face that had once haunted him returns. The third applicant is the same terrifying model he encountered in the magazine. Iwasaki feels an odd sensation coming from the model's gaze, and they all wonder why a professional model would apply to work with amateur filmmakers like them. This piques Oda's interest, and he considers casting the terrifying model alongside the beautiful actress. Upon hearing this, Iwasaki quickly objects, asking if they are really going to cast that model in a horror film. However, Oda and most of their friends find the idea intriguing, so Iwasaki's objections are dismissed. Finally, on the day of the audition at the beautiful and charming Arithma coffee shop on the 4th floor, the lovely actress arrives, and when Iwasaki and Oda meet her in person, they both admire her. She looked even more beautiful than in the pictures. And suddenly, Iwasaki turned in shock at something, which was the other actress, the terrifying model, standing there staring at him with a frightening gaze for a moment. Before she introduced herself as Fuji, a professional model, her real face sent chills down their spines, especially for Iwasaki, who was even more frightened than the others. Seeing that Iwasaki was scared, Oda playfully teased Fuji by telling her that Iwasaki was her fan, which made Fuji smile slightly. However, that was enough to leave Iwasaki almost speechless. That evening, on the way home, Iwasaki asked Oda to reconsider the idea of having Fuji act, reasoning that, with Fuji being so tall, it might be difficult to have her in regular scenes. However, he still saw that Fuji had a unique presence that could potentially make the film successful. Finally, the day arrived for filming, and the first scene required them to travel deep into the forest. The group of friends and actors had to drive there, but during the ride, Iwasaki had to sit in the car with the model Fuji, whom he feared. His discomfort was evident on his face, and he felt uneasy sitting next to her, prompting him to urge Oda to drive faster to reach their destination. Oda reassured him that once they arrived, he would be able to breathe in the fresh natural air, since it was a forest with no inhabitants, meaning there was no pollution at all. Yamada, hearing this, jokingly remarked that if there were no people, it meant they were really going to make a horror film, which made everyone in the car laugh, including Fuji, who had been quiet for a while. However, everyone was shocked when they saw Fuji's teeth, which were sharp fangs numbering in the hundreds, vastly different from human teeth. Everyone had to brace themselves to continue with the filming. Once they arrived at their destination, everyone got out of the car and walked out to enjoy the fresh air. Fuji told everyone that she loved it there, and Iwasaki approached Oda to discuss how he had just seen Fuji's terrifying teeth in the car, which looked nothing like normal human teeth. Oda agreed, but filming still had to proceed. While Oda was rehearsing with the actress for the scene, Iwasaki, Yamamoto, and Fuji were sitting and waiting to go on set. Suddenly, Iwasaki felt a chill run down his spine, and when he looked over at Fuji, he found her staring at him intently the whole time. Yamamoto joked that Fuji was fixated on Iwasaki, which only made Iwasaki feel even more uneasy, adding to his strange premonition about the terrifying aura emanating from Fuji. Feeling uncomfortable, he excused himself to wash his face along the path, but Fuji followed him out without him realizing. When Iwasaki unexpectedly encountered her quietly appearing, he was startled and immediately ran away from her. At that moment, Fuji looked very frightening, her eyes glaring as if she wanted to devour him. Iwasaki managed to hide behind a tree, hoping the terrifying Fuji wouldn't see him as she ran past. After that, he walked back to the filming location, where all his friends were waiting for him since he was supposed to play the lead in the next scene. When his friends saw Iwasaki running in a panic, they asked about Fuji, as both of them had disappeared at the same time. However, Iwasaki, not wanting to discuss anything further, urged his friends to hurry up, because he could no longer stand being around someone as terrifying as Fuji. The production team stated that they couldn't just abandon the work and leave Fuji alone in the middle of the forest. While the two were arguing, Fuji slowly walked out from the woods, prompting Iwasaki to rush into the scene to finish it. However, the scene being filmed from morning until afternoon that day did not include Fuji at all, and everyone was focused on Tame, causing Fuji, who had been waiting a long time to go on set, to walk in and ask in a huff when she would finally get her turn. With her frightening demeanor, Oda responded that Fuji's role was very important and would be filmed after the break. During the break, Iwasaki, Oda, and Yamamoto discussed what to do about Fuji, as they had initially brought her along thinking she would have an interesting supporting role. However, they found it difficult to come up with a part for her, leading Iwasaki to suggest leaving her in the woods. Yamamoto pointed out that if they were to face consequences later, it might be worse, especially since Oda was still sitting with Fuji. Just then, while the three were trying to reach an agreement, a panicked Mii rushed in and told his friends that Fuji had just eaten Ai. At first, the friends thought Mii was joking, but the look on his face indicated otherwise. He then told all his friends to go see what had happened, and at that moment, only Iwasaki believed that Miyake was telling the truth, as he thought Fuji could really eat people. They all helped search for clues and Iwasaki until they found a trail of blood smeared all over the area. Suddenly, Fuji, covered in blood, appeared from behind and told them that she was the one, before she began to chase them down fiercely. She managed to grab Miyake, and at that moment, Iwasaki stumbled and fell to the ground. When he turned to look back, he was met with a horrifying sight. Miyake had been bitten in the neck by Fuji and was already dead. This made him start to think about his own bad premonitions, realizing that this must be it. Fuji's gaze locked onto him as she said, "Finally, we can be together, just the two of us." The story ends here, leaving the audience to ponder what will happen to Iwasaki. Next. Long Dream. The scene opens in a hospital at night, where a young woman, suffering from a fear of death, cries in the middle of the night. She keeps thinking about what to do. She doesn't want to die, but she knows she will have to someday. Her fear is overwhelming, as she is terrified of not existing in this world. While she is lost in thought, she notices a shadowy figure standing in front of her room, which then opens the door. The next morning, Dr. Kuroda and a newly transferred assistant come to check on her condition. She tells them that she dreamed of meeting the Grim Reaper who came to take her away, but Dr. Kuroda explains that it was not the Grim Reaper, but a patient from the room next to hers. Despite his reassurances, she remains unconvinced, insisting that such a figure must be the Grim Reaper, not a human, but a creature from the other side of darkness. Afterward, the assistant doctor discusses the serious condition that the young woman is suffering from, which is a phobia of death, and complains about the patient in the room next to hers, saying that if that patient wanders around the hospital at night, it could be a problem. Perhaps that patient is also afraid to sleep. The assistant asks about that patient, and Dr. Kuroda explains that the patient's name is Mokoteshiro. He came to the hospital 2 months ago, saying he was suffering from dreams, because the time in his dreams was much longer than that of normal people. On the first night he started having long dreams. It lasted for a month, and then it kept getting longer, from 1 month to 2 months to half a year. It wasn't that he felt it upon waking, he could feel it while he was dreaming. If it were good dreams, he probably wouldn't have come to see a doctor, but he only experienced nightmares when he closed his eyes to sleep. Sometimes when he dreamed for too long, upon waking, he couldn't distinguish between what was real and what was a dream. And he didn't know how long the dreams would extend, maybe 10 years, 20 years, or even 100 years, which disrupted his daily life. He could no longer endure such dreams because for him, yesterday felt like a year ago. Then Dr. Kuroda decided to have him undergo tests at the hospital to observe him while he slept. That very night, Mukoda's body exhibited strange reactions. He began to tremble, and his eyes rolled rapidly. However, this only happened for a moment. The brainwave results showed that he was in deep sleep. Seeing this, Dr. Kuroda decided to wake Mukoda up, and when he did, it took him a while to regain his senses. To normalize the situation, Dr. Kuroda realized that Mukoda was not lying, but he had to endure the suffering of these dreams. Not long after, Dr. Kuroda still did not know the cause of such dreams. At that time, Mukoda was dreaming for almost 10 years in one night, and he could no longer bear it. If he continued to dream for thousands of years, even 2,000 years, he would surely lose his sanity. Eventually, as he predicted, his dreams became faster and heavier. From the perspective of a normal dreamer, it couldn't be dismissed as mere imagination. Now, Mukoda's physical condition had changed drastically. He was emaciated, and his hair had fallen out to the point of near baldness. His skin was dry, and his eye sockets were sunken, with his eyes bulging out, making him hardly look human anymore. Previously, he would show signs of distress whenever he met the doctor, and when he encountered the mother, he would often claim that the mother in the next room was his wife, exhibiting signs of madness. When the mother saw Mukoda in his current state, she thought he was the Grim Reaper coming to take her away, which led the doctors and nurses to try to restrain Mukoda while also needing to keep the mother calm, resulting in a chaotic situation. After Mukoda was restrained and taken back to his room, he sat thinking about his current state, which seemed to have changed drastically, as he hardly resembled a human anymore. This made him overthink, and he spoke to Dr. Kuroda, expressing his fear that if he continued to have these long dreams indefinitely, it would become a never-ending nightmare. He wondered what would happen to him if he dreamed forever. The next morning, while Dr. Kuroda was checking on patients, Mukoda's mother was still crying out in fear of dying, insisting that she did not want to die. They then proceeded to Mukoda's room, but when they opened the door, they were shocked by the sight of him. His body had begun to crack and appeared monstrous, yet he remained asleep in his dream. Ultimately, Dr. Kuroda waited until the end, as Mukoda's body disintegrated into crystals. The wind blowing in from outside scattered the crystal fragments throughout the room. Dr. Kuroda could only stare at those tiny crystal pieces, wondering if Mukoda's mind was trapped in his dreams forever. He then collected the fragments of Mukoda to examine them and analyze how they related to his dreams. The scene cuts back to the mother, who has just woken up to find Dr. Kuroda. She tells him that she feels much better, but she feels strange because she has experienced very long dreams. That afternoon, the assistant doctor asked Dr. Kuroda about the mother, noting that her appearance had changed significantly, similar to Mukoda's, likely due to the long dreams. Dr. Kuroda explained that he had extracted substances from the shattered crystal fragments of Mukoda's body and injected them back into the mother. The mother, who feared death and disappearance more than anything, wondered what would happen if she had even longer dreams. Her mind would remain there, never dying, even if it was just a temporary hallucination. If humans could dream indefinitely, they could escape death forever. The scene then cuts back to the mother, whose condition is gradually changing, resembling Mukoda, as she is trapped in those long dreams.